and how he has tremendous love for his family and for the game of baseball and for everybody who loves the game of baseball. You read a lot about today's stars, as you should, doing the right thing, speaking with the right groups of people, and I see Pete do it. I see Pete do it often. I see Pete do it on a small scale. I see Pete do it on a large scale, and often without kind of fanfare. And the lesson that I've learned working with him is to always be grateful. He brings tremendous compassion to how he treats other people. And it's my pleasure to introduce the Hit King, a guy who has a tremendously inspirational life story, Pete Rose.
Thank you, Ray. First of all, thank you all for coming. Sorry you have to be here today going over, discussing the mistakes I made many, many years ago. I wish you all happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and happy holidays, and to you and yours. And I'd also like to thank Mr. Manfred for giving me the opportunity to go to New York to meet with him and Mr. McHale. And the meeting was a very cordial meeting. I first got to meet the commissioner at the All-Star game this past year in Cincinnati, and we had a cordial meeting that day too. So the commissioner we put him in a tough spot to make a judgment on this situation, and I'm disappointed. Obviously, I'm disappointed, but I will continue to be the best baseball fan in the world. There's two things I learned that I could do. I could hit a baseball, and I think I can learn or teach a lot of people not to make the same mistakes that I made. That they can learn from my situation. And I think there's a lot of people that may be headed in the wrong path, can just look at what happened to me and learn from that situation. And you know, I continuously talk to players on a daily basis. I'm a very positive talker about the game of baseball. I watch more games than probably anybody you'll ever take a picture of. You know, starting at 4 o'clock and going all the way to the 7:30 games on the West Coast when baseball season's here. And I continue to try to sell the game of baseball, which I would do more than I have, and I've done it pretty much in the last 20, 25 years, because that's really what I know. I'm a baseball player. I'm a baseball person, and that's never going to change. You know, I spent 26 years in the major leagues and 26 years out of the major leagues. And I can tell you without a doubt, the last 26 years were a hell of a lot worse than the 26 years I spent in the big leagues, as you can imagine. And, you know, I put my family through a lot of things over the years, and they stuck behind me. My fans have stuck behind me, and I appreciate that. I can't tell you the ongoing support I get everywhere I go, and I think that's partly because of the way I played the game, the way I approached the game, the way I try to sell the game. To be honest with you, I should actually be the commissioner of baseball. The way I talk about the game of baseball, I mean. And I know Mr. Manfred, the new commissioner, will do a great job. I got a lot of respect for the office of the commissioner. And, you know, I've really had maybe 3 dads in my life. One was my dad, and 2 was Sparky Anderson. And 3, believe it or not, was Bart Giamatti. You know, he really helped me when I was a young player, and he became the president of the National League. And I had several meetings with him about what we could do to make the game of baseball a better game. And as you know, he's the one that suspended me back in 1989. But all the time he did that, he was trying to help me. And it took me some years to understand that, but I finally did understand exactly what he meant when he told me to reconfigure my life. And there was a time in my life when I was out of control, gambling. I guess there's probably a lot of people in this town could be out of control gambling, but I worked hard at it. I got it under wraps. the last several years, and you know, I'm in control of my life right now, and I'm doing well. I only get to watch baseball, but I get to comment about baseball on Fox. I get to come here to my restaurant and talk to people every night, or down to Mandalay Bay where I work 4 hours a day, constantly talking about fans of baseball and constantly trying to make the game a better game, help young players, 12, 13 years old, get off to the right step, get off to the right course. You know, there's a course that you got to get on, you got to stick to it. And that's about it. I don't know if I missed anything, Ray. Or Mark, did I miss anything?
I'm sure they have some questions for you after Mark says something.
Mark's from LA, by the way, but he was born in Cincinnati, so he's a good guy.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Mark Rosenbaum, M-A-R-K-R-O-S-E-N-B-A-U-M. And I'm going to start out, Pete, by thanking you. It's been a privilege to be able to represent you. I did grow up in Cincinnati. I know what you meant to that town. I know what you meant to the families there. I know how you brought generations together. And so I'm very grateful for that. I also want to thank the Commissioner and Mr. McHale. They were cordial to us. They were open with us. And they provided Pete with an opportunity to talk about his life and his mistakes. And we appreciate those courtesies. I want to just talk about two things this morning very briefly. The first is this. It's undisputed that Pete broke the cardinal rule of baseball. But I want you to know that over the past 26 years, that Pete, following the admonition of Commissioner Giamatti, has changed his life. He is a changed man. He is a repentant man. He is a man whose life is under control. I have seen Pete in some of these very difficult circumstances. I've seen him break down when he discussed the impact of his actions on his children. He told a story to Commissioner Manfred about seeing his son in minor league baseball being heckled by fans, the music The Gambler being played, people in the stands waving $10 and $20 bills. And Pete said, in this world we're supposed to make it better for our children, but I made it worse. And I know the toll that that's taken on Pete. I've seen Pete break down when he talked about how he felt that he let his father down in committing the sort of acts that he has. And I've watched Pete as he has placed the two things that he puts most important in his life, baseball and his family, first. How do we know that Pete has changed? You've never heard of Pete with respect to any scandal. You've never heard of Pete with respect to any binge, with respect to any legal problems. We're in a city where what happens in Las Vegas does not stay in Las Vegas. But you've never heard of Pete embarrassing himself over these past 3 decades. He lives an orderly, I would say boring life, but a well-disciplined life that is committed to his passions. His focus has been watching baseball, talking baseball, and taking care of his family. I want to say one other thing about the Hall of Fame. When Pete came to Ray and me, and we discussed filing a petition for reinstatement, Pete was very clear that he was not doing that in order to become eligible for the Hall of Fame. In fact, he said, I don't want to do it for that reason. I don't want that part of the petition. I want one thing. I want to be on the same side of baseball. I don't want anyone to think that I am at war with baseball. I don't want to be at odds with baseball. But in my view, Commissioner Manfred got it exactly right when he said at page 3 of his decision, the considerations that should drive a decision on whether to work in baseball are not the same as those that should drive a decision on Hall of Fame eligibility. I think it makes a difference whether Pete is eligible for the Hall of Fame. I think that is part of his legacy. I think that is part of what history demands. I think that is part of what baseball fans demand. And so I wonder about this. I wonder if it is worth asking this simple question. What does baseball gain by keeping Pete Rose from even being considered for entry, for eligibility into the Hall of Fame? The determination as to whether he should be eligible for the Hall of Fame has always been based on achievement on the field. If there is concern about deterrence, what Major League Baseball player would say, I will break a cardinal rule because after 26 years of going through what Pete has gone through, I can then be considered eligible? Pete's accomplishments, such as being the all-time hit leader, warrant his inclusion at minimum for consideration in the Hall of Fame. Pete played the game exactly as it was intended to be played. No one contends that his accomplishments or his play were ever tainted or ever compromised in any way. He has been punished, and he has been punished severely by being banished from the game he loves, denied now for over a quarter of a century, and from ever being considered to be a manager or a coach or an advisor or a scout. The Hall of Fame, by design, reflects achievements on the field, not character or behavior off the field. Indeed, players and others who did terrible harm to the game, as for example by defending and maintaining the color line, or by engaging in racial harassment, have been considered eligible for the Hall of Fame, and some are in fact in the Hall of Fame. It is, after all, the Hall of Fame, not the Hall of Saints. We are a nation of second chances. Grace and forgiveness are among our nation's greatest virtues. But when it comes to the Hall of Fame, I implore the committee not to give Pete a second chance, but to give him a first chance. A chance to be evaluated on who he was as a player and what he gave to the game on the field. And finally, I implore the committee to do this during Pete's lifetime. Again, I want to thank you, Pete, for the opportunity to be part of your team, and to the Commissioner for listening to our petition. We can take a few questions now.
Pete, can I ask you, you've said some very kind things about the Commissioner, and it shows you have a great deal of respect for him. I want to know just your overall reaction. What's going through your heart and mind? I mean, obviously the decision did not come out the way you wanted it to. What's your reaction to the overall decision?
Well, obviously disappointment, no question about that, but I've been saying this for many, many years now, that I'm not going to sit here on Las Vegas Boulevard and complain about something because I'm the one that screwed up. I'm the one that made the mistake. I can only hope that I can prevent other people from making the kind of mistakes that I made in the game of baseball, especially young people. That's the way it is, and you win some, you lose some, and you get rained out unless you're in the dome. So it's just part of life. If I could change the way my life was lived, obviously I would change. But you can't rewrite something that's already happened. You have to live with it. But you have to try to become a better person because of it. And try to make the people around you better people. And that's what I do on a consistent basis.
And could you
I'm a good guy, to be honest with you.
Could you clarify one thing that I see, maybe if I got it incorrectly, tell me. In the commissioner's statement, he seemed to suggest, or maybe he said flat, that you told him you are still gambling on baseball. I don't know if I got that right or wrong. Or you're gambling and including baseball.
Yes, well, unlike 30 years ago when I was out of control as a gambler, I look at myself today. I don't live in Las Vegas because I gamble. I live in Las Vegas because that's where my job is, and this is the only town where my job works, is Las Vegas. You're probably the same as me. I'm a recreational gambler now. You know, if I want to go home and watch something on TV and make a small bet on it, I don't bet every day. I'm not a casino guy. You know, I don't play blackjack. I don't do the roulette. I don't do dice. I don't do all that kind of stuff. I occasionally like to go bet on horses because I used to be a horse owner, and I got a lot of respect for a lot of influential people in that industry. And but everything I do is legal. You know, no more behind the scenes stuff that got me in trouble. And I'm very selective of people I associate myself with, which was another reason I got in trouble back in the 70s or the 80s, I should say. But that's the way. But I tried to be as honest as I could with the commissioner, and I think he respected that. And I made a couple mistakes during the meeting, but by the time we left the meeting, I clarified the mistakes that I said, because some of his questions I kind of panicked. I hope you're never in that situation, but you have. I don't know if we've all been there.
How do you feel about people, ball players, that have been tainted with the steroid scandal while they were playing baseball, allegedly had to actually cheat while they were playing, being eligible for the Hall of Fame?
Well, first of all, I can honestly say that no one on my team or none of the players I played against took steroids, to my knowledge. And I'm not going to sit here and badmouth guys who are linked to steroids because they're friends of mine. You know, Barry Bonds is a friend of mine. A-Rod's a friend of mine. Clemens is a friend of mine. I don't know Sosa, but he was a great player. I don't know Palmeiro, but they'll be judged by somebody, and I'm not going to compare the two. It's very similar. Don't compare my case to Joe Jackson. You know, there are different cases in different periods of time in our country. So I just hope those guys understand the mistakes they made, and they can try to help people or prevent people from making the same mistakes that they made. You know, all you can do if you make mistakes is try to learn from your mistakes and try to be a better person for it. You understand what I'm saying? It's not rocket science, but I can honestly say no one on my team or no one I ever played with. Boy, if the Big Red Machine would have took steroids, we might have never lost a game.
Why did you continue to gamble? Did you not think it would affect your case for reinstatement?
Well, you have to understand, and a lot of people don't understand this, but why did you continue to gamble? Well, I didn't continue to gamble like I used to. And I worked hard my whole life. And I'm 74 years old, and that's the way I get my enjoyment. I'm not a stock market guy. You know, I'm not with DraftKings and all that stuff online. I do none of that stuff. You know, but if I want to bet on a football game, go home and watch it, that's my night of enjoyment. So, and you're partly right. I shouldn't have did that, but I got to live my life here. Only here once. If you live right, once is enough. So, you know, but like I said, everything I do today is legal. You know, I
And in control.
and I'm in control of myself. I'm in control of what I'm doing.
Pete,
Good question, though.
do you
feel like this is it? This is your last shot at getting reinstated, and then?
No, not really, because I'll continue the path of reconfiguring my life. Tomorrow, yesterday, next week, next year, next month, and all I can do is try to be a better person every day. Where eventually they'll want me in, they'll want me to be back, but I just have to keep this thing going here. You know, keep this thing going for how many more years? My son's there. If I kick the bucket, I mean, he can make a speech in Cooperstown. He's an educated kid. So.
We're from Cincinnati. What would you say to your hometown right now?
Oh, I love Cincinnati. I love the fans.
A lot of people there say sometimes you've been your own worst enemy.
I have been, no question about it. No, but I've learned from my experiences. But also, a lot of people clap when I go to the ballpark too. But I love the fans of the Queen City. I mean, that's the baseball capital of the world as far as I'm concerned.
Right down.
And I've been treated like a king in Cincinnati. And I think everybody in Cincinnati, if I'm not mistaken, kind of understands that I understand that I messed up. See what you started?
Let him finish. Let him finish.
Pete, there are millions of fans on regards to that topic of the door still being open. Millions of fans who want to know what they can do next. They support you in Cincinnati and globally. What can they do over the next couple of years if the door is still open for reinstatement and the Hall of Fame?
What can fans do?
Well, just continue to be positive. Support my foundation, Hustle for Heroes. You know, I know a lot of people don't know that here today, but you know, every day of in this country, JT, 22 veterans commit suicide. And when I found out that last year sometime, we started this foundation just trying to help people. That's all I try to do is help people, whether it's veterans or whether it's young players or whether it's veteran players or whether it's just Little League players. You know, you always got to try to help somebody, because I've been through everything in my life. I've been through so many experiences, good, bad, and indifferent. And I think based on what I've done in the past, people can learn a lot. And maybe they won't make the mistakes that I made.
You know, if I can add to that, and this goes to the question the young woman asked before, I'm a civil rights lawyer by trade, and I represent homeless veterans. And when Pete found out about that, Pete said, what can I do to help out? And Pete has communicated with many of the homeless veterans whom I represent, veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan, one in particular who was in the first the first group that went to the Tora Bora Mountains to look for Osama bin Laden, and who now lives on the streets. And Pete went to him and assisted him. And I suppose if Pete's life were oriented about getting back into baseball, you would have heard a lot of publicity about that. But Pete made it clear to me that he wanted to do it, but he didn't want to have a press conference about it, and he didn't want to publicize it. He just wanted to be there. You hear a lot about ball players going to hospitals and talking to young and older people who are in very bad shape. And I know this, and Ray knows this. We've seen Pete do that. We've seen Pete talk to families, find out that a loved one is in a hospital, and go visit them. And you haven't heard about that either. And if Pete's life were oriented about getting back into baseball, that would have been the first brochure that we would have given the commissioner. But Pete always insisted that he wanted to do it for the act itself. And I think that's part of reconfiguring. I think that's part of what Commissioner Giamatti meant. That Pete would take responsibility for his actions, and that his actions would be from what came from within, not how others would relate to them one way or the other. And Pete has done that time and time again with vets, and time again with young kids, and time again with people who could use a pat on the back from the greatest hitter in the history of baseball.
You know, one of my dads, I mentioned Sparky Anderson, what Marky's talking about, back in the 70s. Every off day we had, Sparky would go to the hospital and visit kids. But he would never go if there was a TV camera around. He did it for the kids. He didn't do it for himself. And I guess that's where I learned that, from Sparky Anderson. You know, that you can make a difference. You can help people just by being you. Just by being me, I can help people. Whether they're 90 or whether they're 4. I mean, I did a thing over in Lancaster for handicapped people the other day at school. And there was a person there 4 years old, and there was one there 92. And they don't live there, they come there every day. And they just, it was unbelievable to see the director of the school, how he knew everybody's name, and he put a smile on everybody's face every time he talked to them. It was just, it was heartwarming, it really was. And that's the same thing that happens to me when I visit these vets. You know, they're the reason we're able to sit out here on Las Vegas Boulevard and kibitz with each other and have fun and you know, live our lives like we do.
You know,
Can't forget those people.
It's not the same thing, but my son was at the University of Michigan, and he was working on a paper, and he asked me, could I call Pete and interview him for the paper? I said, well, sure, you can try. So he calls Pete, and he's talking to Pete, and I get a text from him. He won't shut up. I'll never get off the phone.
And that was unusual because I'm an Ohio State fan, okay? And he's at Michigan.
Let me ask you, your family knows what you've done, your fans know what you've done, those who maybe aren't your fans know what you've done. Why is it so important to have that plaque in the Hall of Fame?
Well, I don't think anybody up here was saying how important it is to have the plaque in the Hall of Fame. I think what we're saying is, based on how I approach the game and the records that I do have, it would be nice to have the opportunity to go to the Hall of Fame. I don't think any player, well, I know, no player ever starts off thinking he's going to the Hall of Fame. When you start off in baseball, all you're hoping for is you can come back the next year, then the next year, then the next year. Then the first thing you know, it's 15 years. Then the next thing you know, it's 20 years. Then you start getting introduced to Johnny Bench, Joe Morgan, and Tony Perez, and Sparky Anderson, and Mike Schmidt. Great players, Steve Carlton, Tom Seaver, Frank Robinson, Barry Larkin, Gary Carter, Andre Dawson. Those are all the great players that I played with. All Hall of Famers. So my whole life has been a Hall of Fame life, just by the association with the teammates I had. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. Hell, I led off for the Big Red Machine. The next 3 guys up got statues at the ballpark. How many players can be in that position? No wonder I scored all those runs.
If they were to put a plaque in there but no ceremony, would that be satisfying to you? Or, I mean, here's the plaque, you walk by, you know.
He said, I don't want to cut you off, but he said clearly, and I think maybe as a fan and as a rep, the Hall of Fame is important kind of to us, but he said clearly that being part of the game, helping the folks in the game.
Listen, here's the thing in a nutshell, okay? And I told Mr. Manfred this, okay? All I want to be, all I look forward to being someday is friends of baseball. I want baseball and Pete Rose to be friends. That's all I want so I can say I'm not an outsider looking in. I got grandkids. They want their grandpa to be associated with baseball. That's all.
You think that, you know, we've known each other a long time, the attitudes about gambling have completely changed in the country. Do you think in 10 years we're still having this conversation?
You know, there's no way to talk about what's going to happen for 10 years.
David, I hope I'm around here 10 years from now, okay?
And we'll talk.
We'll still be turning hamburgers, man.
Last question.
Do you think it's a little hypocritical
baseball, they have a business relationship.
Well, you know,
DraftKings, and yet,
like I said,
they
I
can't
don't.
kick you out of the game because you go over to the sports
You,
books and bet on
you can make that evaluation. I mean, you know, I'm not a DraftKings guy. I'm not a online guy. I don't have an account offshore. I don't have a credit line at any casino in this town. I'm not that. I'm not that type of guy. I just try to have fun and live my life and try to have some enjoyable moments. And I don't know what baseball is doing. I know Mr. Manfred knows what the hell he's doing. He's going to be a great commissioner. And there's a reason why they do what they do, and I'm not here to second guess what they do. But that don't mean I still can't be disappointed I wasn't given a reinstatement. But I'm not going to get mad at anybody. I'm the one that caused this situation. If I hadn't started being out of control back in the late 80s, we wouldn't be standing here today. You'd be out Christmas shopping for your wife. I hope.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
you.
And happy holidays to you.
Go.